Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Relationship Talks. I am your host, Laurie Brooke, and together we will get to take a look at what goes on behind closed doors. Today, I am joined by Afsaneh Moradian.
Hi, I am Afsaneh Moradian. I'm the founder of MLC Homeschool Coaching, and I'm here today to talk about how to troubleshoot any conflicts, problems that you have in your homeschooling relationship with your child.
Afsaneh Moradian is a homeschooling coach and author of the beloved picture book series, Jamie is Jamie, which has sold over 10,000 copies internationally. As a homeschooling coach, she works with parents who are struggling to homeschool their neurodiverse and high-needs kids. Afsaneh guides adults by giving them the language to communicate effectively with their children, empowering them to create learning spaces that are safe and inclusive so children can thrive. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Relationship Talks. As you would have heard in the introduction, I'm here with Afsaneh, and she is here to talk about parent-child relationships and how complicated they can get when it comes to homeschooling your children. Now, I know in the most recent environment, many of us would have had to experience homeschooling in one form or another, thank you to COVID-19. And some of us have continued homeschooling. Afsaneh is here to really share with us how we can work within those boundaries and really make sure that our relationships with our children are going from strength to strength as opposed to ending up in conflict and fights and issues each and every day. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very, very welcome. I have to say, I am loving that room behind you. It looks fun, it looks inviting, and it looks like there's so much to do.
Yeah, well, when we planned our house, I had a toddler at the time, and I thought, well, I really need to be able to see my child from any angle. So I planned accordingly. And then I realized the problem with open concept is you can't hide the mess. You can't close the door. And so for all of you, if you've got open concept, you know what I mean. And if you're thinking about it, really think about, do you want to see the mess from all angles? Because it's there. So.
It looks fun though. For me, there's just so much color and it looks like there's so many activities to keep people engaged.
Yeah, well, I think a wonderful part of homeschooling is you get to set up the environment and have access to all kinds of things at your fingertips, if it's art or different kinds of books or games, activities, that sort of thing. So I definitely got to set up the space. Even though I wasn't planning on homeschooling when we got the house, it ended up working out really well for that. So yeah, it's fun. It's an area. It's not as big as it looks, but it's roomy, so it works. Yeah.
Tell me, Afsaneh, how long have you been homeschooling for?
So I have been homeschooling. I started when my child was 4, and we are now in our, my child is 10 and a half. So this is, I guess, what is it? It's like the 7th year of homeschooling. But I was a teacher for a very long time before I became a homeschooling parent. I've been teaching in various forms for over 20 years, from preschool to junior high, working with elementary, working at all levels. And I ended up teaching university, doing teacher trainings, and even teaching graduate school for, future teachers. So I've really seen it all. It's really hard for me to be surprised by anything.
So I suppose you in somewhat had the skills going into homeschooling. You knew from a teacher's perspective what to expect. How is it different though, being a parent and going in and doing it?
I was going to say, so being a teacher actually didn't really prepare me for homeschooling at all. It's so different. So for me as a teacher, it's like, okay, where's my board? Where's my lesson plan? Where's my board? Okay, you sit there and I'm going to put on the board what we're doing and you do it. And homeschooling is the opposite of that. Homeschooling is collaborative, it's free flowing, it's flexible. And it's really understanding your individual child or your individual children, what they need, what their interests are. And so I ended up getting into coaching because I have a high needs child, and I know other parents of, neurodiverse, high needs kids. We don't have a situation where if we ask our children to do something that they just go do it. Like, put your shoes on, it's time to go. Okay, mommy. No, our kids are like, no, why? I'm not doing that. You can't make me do it. So that then extends into homeschooling. And, so many parents get a curriculum that they think is going to be great, start the experience, and then they realize, their kids resist. They don't want to do the assignment or the activity. And then the parents don't know what to do. And it takes this dream of something that's supposed to be full of connection and warmth and collaboration and enjoying your child and having fun together. And it turns it into this power struggle so quickly because you say, oh, today we're going to do XYZ. And your child says, no, or that's too hard. I don't want to do that. I'm tired. Or they do the subtle resistance of dropping the pencil 100 times, which I don't know if you ever did that in school. It's amazing how kids just instinctively know if you drop the pencil, you have to pick it up and you can't do the assignment because you're busy picking it up. Or I used to always have to get a tissue. I got like a million tissues in class every day for many, many years of school.
Or running to the bathroom or needing to get a drink of water. Yep. It's like
Exactly.
bedtime.
Exactly. So there's always resistance with learning, and it's really hard if you don't understand why your child is resisting, what the problem is. Then you think, oh, they don't want to try something new. They're being lazy. They're just procrastinating. So then the parents, the general response then is to cheerlead. Come on, you can do it. I know you can do it. And then maybe the child tries, or maybe they say, I can't. And then the parents, oh, get it done. And we'll do something really fun afterwards. That positive reinforcement, right? And then maybe that works a couple of days, and then maybe it stops working, and then maybe it's, I can't do it. And then the parent gets really stressed and kind of anxious because you're responsible for their education and they won't do the assignment. And then it's like, do this or else. I'm going to, you'll lose screen time. You can't play that video game. You can't do that thing that you love. And then it just turns into, it goes south so quickly in that moment, because you're putting that negative consequence, do this or else something will happen. And then your child feels pushed into a corner, and they're either going to, cry and try to do it through their tears, or they're gonna come out fighting. And some kids do that, literally fighting. They're very physically aggressive. And I had to go through those experiences in order to understand that when my child is resisting, they actually have a really good reason for it. Kids are not, we're always told, oh, your child is being manipulative. They just want 5 extra minutes. They don't want to go to sleep. They're looking for ways to get out of bedtime. They're looking for ways to get out of doing something. They're manipulating you. Don't hug them. Don't pick them up. No, hug them, pick them up. They want love. They need love. They want to feel respected. They want to feel heard. They want to know that you're supporting them. So, I became a coach to help parents with this stuff. I developed some digital products that are a little more, less expensive to help. But the gist of it is, the essence of it is that our kids are resisting for a really good reason. And once you understand why they're resisting and you can actually support them and fix whatever is blocking them from doing something, maybe the assignment is too hard. Maybe it's developmentally inappropriate. Maybe it's just so boring and tedious. They can't do it and they need something a little more fun. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe they need a movement break. Maybe, right? But we don't know. We make assumptions. And our assumptions generally tend to be, they're challenging my authority. They're being lazy, because that's how we were seen when we were students. And so homeschooling is really, it requires a process amongst the parents, amongst the adults, to shake off everything that you know about schooling, right? To deny your needs, Ignore that you're hungry, ignore that you're thirsty, forget it. Who cares if you're sick? Just get it done. And really, it's, well, what do you need? What are your child's needs? What do they relate to? What do they respond to? What are they passionate about? And you get to bring that in because there aren't any rules. And that's what makes it really fun and exciting. But when the parent doesn't feel confident and doesn't know how to do that, and they've relied on this package curriculum, because those are the experts who write the curriculum. And what do I know? I'm just the parent. So if you don't feel confident at all to do it and you're relying on what someone else has made, that, they can't possibly know what your child needs. You know what your child needs. There has to be some modifications in there. So then parents are really in a tough spot. They've got all that anxiety and pressure. They're responsible for teaching their kid. Their kid doesn't want to do the assignment. They don't know how to change it. They don't know what to do. And boom, you have conflict. You get a dynamic of conflict. There's really no way around it. So that I think is the biggest source of conflict in that homeschooling relationship, is when your child resists and you don't know what to do and you feel that you just have to get them to do it no matter what. And that no matter what lays the seeds for those power struggles. And you don't feel collaborative, you don't feel connected, you feel like you're fighting each other, like you have to fight with your child to get them to learn. And that just feels awful. And it feels really awful for the kids too. It's not really a fun dynamic to be in at all.
I can relate so much to that, during the COVID-19 period when we were homeschooling, but just also now from a homework perspective, getting them to do homework and having that power struggle in terms of just sit down and do it. And getting it done that way. Can I ask, how long did it take? I mean, you've got that experience as a teacher and then you've come into homeschooling. How long did it take for you to realize that that stuff has to go out the window and I have to relearn a new way to do it?
So what I had to really figure out was, what does this human being need? So if I wanted writing to happen and my child really, so we got into homeschooling because we only had academic preschools available, and we started with that, and my child would just come home and be an absolute monster, and they couldn't handle, at the age of 3, being told what to do and how to do it all day long, and learning, a 3-year-old being told to write the letter E 16 times. That's like torture. They're developmentally, they can't really do that. So it killed writing for my child. They hated the idea of picking up the pencil and doing, writing any words. It took a very long time to get past that sort of trauma, really, that they experienced at so young. So I had to understand, what did I want my child to be learning? Where were they at? And what did I need to do to get them there, to get that happening anyway? So, there's so many different ways to learn something, right? So if it's writing letters to practice letters, it doesn't have to be with a pencil. It can be with a stick in the dirt. It can be with sidewalk chalk outside. There's so many different ways. And sometimes, I did need to just back off and not try to get them to write letters for a while, because it was just going to trigger a trauma response, and that wasn't going to get us anywhere. And then I had to understand too, like, it doesn't feel good to hold a pencil. So what kinds of things could we do to strengthen those, strengthen their fingers, strengthen their forearms, hanging from monkey bars and things like that go a really, really, really long way to strengthen those muscles. Doing things like making pizza dough and kneading the dough, kneading bread, using, the Play-Doh when they're young, but if you move into modeling clay, plasticine when they're older, it's a lot harder. So it was me. So it's not that I didn't have a benefit as an educator. It's that I had to get rid of my sense of control, because as a teacher, I would plan the lessons. I would decide what was going to happen in my classroom, and it was my job to make sure they all did it. And as a homeschooling parent, it was really thinking about, well, what kinds of things, what kinds of, topics, skills do I want my child to learn? And then how can I do that in a way where the emphasis is on the fun and the experience and not on the skills? So a lot of times we think, oh, we have to teach reading, so sit down and read out loud. and it's awful. They don't want to do it. It's so boring, right? And really coming up with fun ways. So sharing a book together and casting, we would cast the book where we would pick, a couple of characters, starting with one character, and my kid would read just the dialogue out loud. Or first we started with just the words in capital letters, which are usually the sound effects. So it's really fun if you're, 4 or 5 years old and you're reading the sound effects. And then you get into, okay, just read the dialogue for that character. And then, and sort of being a part of the reading, a part of the story, but it's about the story. It's not about the reading and the reading skills. So figuring out how to make that shift, you play to the strengths to, build up what's still, I don't want to call them weaknesses, just what they're still learning how to do. So you boost their confidence as learners. And that, honestly, I didn't know what that meant for my child at age 5. What does that mean for my child at age 7? Because they're not the same based on age and grade level. They're so different. It's development. You can't rush it. Neurodivergent or not, it doesn't matter. Every child has their own developmental path. And so it's how do you observe? How do you figure that out? How do you understand what's going on? And unfortunately, when it comes to homework, just because I know tons of parents fight over homework. You don't get to decide what the homework is, but you can validate, you can commiserate. Homework can be so boring sometimes. I did not like when I had to do homework either. What can we do to make it fun? How can we turn this into a game? How do we, you look for the most fun possible, the path of least resistance. They hate it when we take over and we try to teach them. They absolutely hate that. That's not going to get anywhere, right? So it's really, can you tell me what you have to do? Asking questions. So it always feels good when you're teaching your parents something. So if they have to explain what the homework is, if they have, then you can check that they actually know what to do. It's a lot of that, like asking questions, checking in, looking for ways to make it into a game, try to get any kind of fun. If it's just so miserable, maybe set the timer. How fast can you do it? Let's just get it done, like rip the Band-Aid off. And if it really isn't working because it's not an appropriate assignment or your kid really doesn't know how to do it, maybe you could see, it depends on the individual teacher, maybe you could work it out. Like if you want my child to practice this skill, could we do it in a different sort of way? Okay, because there's so many different ways to practice, to review things. Is there any flexibility at all? Or, maybe you send the email, I'm really sorry, my child doesn't remember this. Can you please explain it again tomorrow and give them a chance to make up this homework? There's got to be a give and take because we don't get to decide the homework. But with homeschooling, if there's no connection, if it seems so tedious and boring, why do it? You don't have to do it. It's okay. You can do it. You can do something different, So there's always a fun, creative approach to learning something. And that's why with homeschooling, when you get that kind of dynamic going, when you feel confident to create those experiences, kids tend to learn far more than they would in a classroom because they get to be engaged, they get to be invested in it, really interested in it, they want to learn, and then they get to go with that in whatever direction they want to take it. There's no limitations put on it. Like, no, you can't learn multiplication. You're only 7, stop, like we wouldn't do that. But we would also say, okay, you're 9 and you're not really remembering your multiplication facts. You're not ready for it. It's okay. We'll keep working on it and you will get it at a certain point. So there's no pressure and they go and, with what they love. And then our job is to kind of even things out and help, just help them continue on their way, facilitate their growth and their development. So it's fun, but it's tricky until you get confident in what that part of it means, I think.
So how has it changed for you over the 7 years?
Well, each stage is harder. I don't know, for all you parents, I'm so sorry to tell you, it just gets harder at every stage of the best time is when they're babies and they can't talk and they can't move and we're so sleep deprived and it's so much work and we don't know it, but it really just gets harder. So I would say, well, as they get older, they're able to, communicate a bit better. You can have more discussions about, what's wrong with this assignment, what isn't going well. They can tell you a bit more. But just as you feel like you're in a groove, around age 10, their hormones start to change. And it all just changes. It's totally different. So I I think that's really, really recognizing development, how development really is the underlying, situation. It's the story. It's a story behind the scenes, right? Of the, why are they acting like this? Why are they being this way? Well, where are they at in their development? And then I have to just constantly shift and relearn who this person is. And I didn't have to do that as much as a teacher because you just have the students for X number of months and then they go away. I mean, I would have some students for 2 school years, but then they go away. So, that kid's,
Yep.
not the most pleasant human being, but they're gone. I don't have to deal with them again. You're stuck with your kid. So you have to, so the most trying days that we have, I look at my child and I just say, I love you so much. That's what comes out of my mouth. I love you so much. Can I give you a hug? Because if I don't focus on how much I love this person and how amazing they are and how incredible they are and how they're on their developmental journey, I might like pull my hair out. I might become an alcoholic. Like, I don't, some days it's like, what is going on? But I think that it's actually homeschooling's become a lot easier because I understand it did take me, I did have to go on my own journey. How do I homeschool this person with their triggers, with their, when my kid goes into distress, there was a ton of physical aggression. I don't really like being kicked or, have things thrown at me because they're frustrated because they wrote something wrong and now they're frustrated and they're tearing up the paper. Some kids have very extreme reactions to things. Their brains all process stuff differently and they react differently. And so really understanding what does it mean to set your child up for success, and then understanding, well, I have to be set up for success and I have to set my child up for success. And that means everybody's needs have to be met in this equation. I have to be having fun. If I'm struggling, they're struggling. If I can't be with them, they can't be with me, right? That's the old saying. If you can't live with your child, they can't live with you either, right? So really understanding, figuring out what is going on with the situation, and using humor always helps. And, having like eyes on the prize. Like, what are we trying to do this morning? What are the most important things we're trying to accomplish this morning? Okay, by hook or by crook, we're going to get there, but it might not be what I had anticipated. It might not be what we planned, and it might go way beyond. And I had to learn that actually I can trust my child because they want to learn. Kids want to learn and they want to do well. And so, when we do projects, I tend to have an idea for a project. So what do you think? And then my kids, sometimes their idea blows me out of the water. We were doing, geography in China a few years ago. And I said, okay, why don't you just take the modeling clay and do like a model of, if you want to do river, mountains, what do you want to do? And my child said, no, I want to write a song. And they wrote a song about the geography of China. Like, okay, I can't do that. That's awesome. Like, that's great. So that's, really not putting those limits, not controlling. You have to lose control. And teachers, we tend to be very controlling people. And you really can't be in control of this other person. You really have to enter into a collaboration with this other person, but you have to guide and you have to, you're steering the ship, but they get to, ultimately they get to say what's happening on the ride. And maybe you're steering it, but you're turning in a different direction because they have a really great idea.
Yep.
So, you have to be very flexible, but really understanding what are the needs, what are the learning needs, the developmental needs, making sure they eat enough. I had to learn the hard way. So many behavior problems happen because the kids are hungry and they're having a growth spurt and you don't know, and they just need food. And so now, so many years into this, if we're going to do something new or challenging, I make sure that my kid eats first, that there's a snack always available, that, if they get a little, I can't, okay, let's take a break. Let's go eat something. Okay, now let's try again. Really, food is a really magical thing. And I need it too. If I'm starting to get a little grouchy, I need some food. I don't like coffee that much. I like iced matcha lattes. I need my matcha. I need my caffeine and a little boost. They might need a little boost too with, a snack, a drink, whatever. So it's really just understanding that this is a full human being. This is not just a student in the traditional learning sense. It's going to show up, empty vessel, do whatever you say, and then move on to the next thing. They're getting sick, they're tired, they're bored, they need movement, they're hungry, they're this, they're that, right? So really understanding when your child learns best, how your child learns best, what they're interested in, how to make it fun and creative, that makes it really lovely. And I'm telling you, that's not easy to do. That's why I'm a coach. Because if you're once you get into those power struggles, it is really hard to get out of it. That is a dynamic that becomes so fixed. And it's really hard to even see that you could get out of that dynamic, especially if your child has, those explosions and meltdowns. You're just in it and you just start to think, oh, I guess homeschooling is just a struggle. I guess it has to be this hard. But it doesn't. It's supposed to be fun for you too, as the adult. I promise. And there's always a solution. There's always a way to make it better. So it's all that. It's looking at that whole picture and being able to say, this isn't working. We just need to do something different today. Like, we're not going to do math right now. We're going to switch gears. Let's go bake something, which is math and chemistry, right? And if you put some designs in it, it can be art too, right? You can make all kinds of art in dough and bake it. So you can see that there's once you identify the learning that exists in all sorts of things, you can keep it play-based with young kids, and you can do all kinds of math. Oh, we're going to have a tea party and everybody needs to have 2 cookies. Who's coming? How many cookies do we need? You can do all sorts of math through play. It doesn't have to be sitting at a table doing worksheets. That's not really what learning has to be like, ever. Unless your kid loves worksheets because they love the structure. But that's not, our schooling experience is really not the only way or even the best way that people learn things. It's just a way to manage, 25 and 35 tiny children, little bodies in a room together with one adult. You can have a mutiny in a second, right? Like, that adult, it's really fake authority. Like, I learned that the hard way my first year teaching. My students would not stop talking. I had 7th grade, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. They wouldn't stop talking for even 5 minutes. I had to learn how to write everything down and just hand out papers to get work done. Until I learned how to have that presence and control, quote unquote, control my class, right? So it's just it's really just a reimagining of everything. It's a relearning for us while we accept who our kids are as individuals.
And thinking outside the box. Really thinking outside the box. Can I ask, in terms of homeschooling, you are with your child every day going through this process. One thing that I feel like when I'm hearing this is also, when's the break? When do you get your time to you?
Yeah, it's an intense job to take on. Yeah. It's because it's just an extension of parenting. It's just way more hours of parenting. So, never being able to go to the bathroom by yourself, it just means all day long you're not going to the bathroom by yourself, right? Like, so there's this expression, steal time. Like, how do you steal time? So one thing, it really changes with the age. So, when your child is younger, they really can't do that much on their own that's independent. You can have them doing some activities and you're near them. If you have to be with them all the time, it's hard. Homeschooling preschool, I know a lot of people do it anyway because they send their kids to school when they're like 5 or 6. The hardest for me was having a 4-year-old and doing learning, because I plan all these awesome activities And they would all take like 10 minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 9:15 in the morning. What are we gonna do for the next like 3 hours? Like what happens now? So, it really changes. Once they're older, they get really excited with what they're learning. They're able to spend more time on it. You can set up hands-on projects that take a bit longer. And then, what relaxes you? Is it stealing a few moments to, go on your phone and check social media a little bit? You can do that. You can steal those moments. If it's, creating a break in a way that works. If they love to go play, with Legos or something, okay, go play with Legos now, and I'm gonna, make some food, get the snack, blah, blah, blah. There's a way to kind of play around with it. If you can get them, to love what they're reading and you sit and read, it's really lovely to have like a family reading time. And they sit with their books, even if they're not the strongest reader yet, and it's more of like magazines or, coloring books with some words. You can play around with reading time however you want. It doesn't have to be chapter books if they're not, at that point. But they read, you read. It's like a mini vacation if you're reading something really good, and if you, have an e-reader and you're not actually reading because you're actually looking at social media, they don't know because your book is on your phone. So, there's, you've got to just kind of figure out how to sneak in some of those breaks throughout the day. But I think the key break really comes from if you can do those afternoon classes, soccer, gymnastics, art, whatever. Some things are less expensive than others, but you do want your kids to be with other kids. And you really, really, really want a different adult responsible for your child for a few hours in the afternoon at least. And so if you can get someone else to be responsible and your child is happy playing and, doing sport, making things, whatever, in a class with other kids, and you can do what you need to do for that time. If you need to be social and talk to other parents, if you need to go into the car, my husband goes in the car and takes a nap, and he is not even sorry about that. He just needs a nap. So, me, I like to, call a friend, talk on the phone. If I have to sit there and stay there, then like I'm probably on the phone or texting. If I can leave my kid and go somewhere else, I'm gonna probably go get, a really nice drink and just feel like a mini vacation at a cafe, or get it to go and come back. But that time is golden. That should not be, if you want to use that time to plan tomorrow, go ahead. But like that is your vacation when they are involved in something else. And I would really say that if you are homeschooling or thinking about homeschooling and you have a partner in your house, you need to seriously schedule, because if you are on that long, it's just not really good for mental health to do all day. So it means when your partner comes home, they should be expected to take over. They're going to play and you're going to go in another room and close the door and not have to talk to anyone, because you probably don't want to talk to anyone for a while. And then you can come out and be with your family again. So you do need to do some scheduling and shifts, and there really does have to be shifts. So the idea that like anyone, usually a mom is going to be a superhero and like do all the cooking, do all the cleaning, teach the child, like no way. That's absolutely ridiculous. So if you're by yourself doing it, then you're not going to be able to do all of that. Probably your house is going to be messy, and that's okay. Maybe the food is going to be, maybe you can cook, maybe you're going to be too tired and you're going to take it, and that is okay. So you have to prioritize. You cannot have this expectation that you're going to be like superhuman people, and your partner has to know going into it, they absolutely are going to do more parenting than they were before. They're probably going to be, if they're not used to washing dishes, here are the gloves. If they're not used to cleaning up, you're going to do these things and they're going to have to do these things, and it becomes a collaboration. And that's a pretty awesome thing for the kids to see too, because it's housework. Learning is collaborative, and housework is collaborative. It's not any one person's job. We all live here. We all make messes. We all have to clean them. And the kids have their role in that. My kid doesn't do their role, so, they don't always do it. But in theory, the kids have a role in that, and the adults have a role in that. And so the more you can schedule, if you can do it in a family meeting type thing, we all have to figure this out. It's not mommy's job to figure out who's doing what and tell her, that's just exhausting.
Yeah.
So if you can schedule, have those family meetings, divide up the jobs, then you can get breaks, because then it's like, okay, maybe over the weekend your partner takes the kids to do something and you have a few hours that's not for cleaning, that's for doing nothing, for relaxing or doing what you love to do, so you can feel like a human that has interests and loves and passions and things that you do,
and not feel guilty for wanting that time.
Oh yeah, no, you have to recharge. If you don't set, like I said, if you don't set yourself up for success, if you wear yourself ragged, it is very difficult to have the patience required for your child in their learning process, because they're going to say, this is too hard, I can't do this, this is boring, I don't want to do this. They're going to say all of that. And it actually takes an enormous amount of energy to stay calm and patient and ask those questions to figure out what is really going on beneath the surface. Do they just need an explanation, or do they need a different kind of activity? Are they getting sick? All that stuff I was talking about. That takes a lot of energy. It can be a little bit easier to just snap and just say, do it, or just get it done. I can't take this anymore. Just get it done. Like, leave me alone, just do it. So that, we can go very quickly to that place when we're pushed beyond our limits. So, if you're doing it on your own, scheduling really matters. I will say young kids do not need, it is not a 6-hour school day when you homeschool. A lot of traditional schooling is lining up, transitioning, eating, recess, snack, lining up, going to music, lining up, going to art. The actual academic learning is just a few hours. So if you're if you're talking about a really young child, if you get, a half hour to an hour and a half in of real learning, that's great. You're done with that. The rest of it's play. And you should be learning through play anyway with a young child, but it's okay. So that's also something I had to wrap my head around, was actually we do so much stuff in a couple of hours that then the pressure is off of you. And it's just, you have to kind of negotiate how much screen you want them to have, what kinds of activities they can do on their own. You just kind of, what do you like to play? What do you hate to play with them, but you'll only do it a little bit? What does the rest of the day look like? So scheduling becomes really, really important, but it's not a set schedule. Like, if my kid does better if they sleep till 9 a.m. and we start learning around 9:30, 10 in the morning. That's fine. Teenagers especially, don't wake them up. I just feel like, don't wake the beast. Like, if they're sleeping, it's because they need it, right? So let your teenagers sleep and start homeschooling later, because they're growing like crazy and they just need the rest. So we don't have to create these arbitrary rules and structures and we don't have to do any of that. And the more you can run, the other thing I specialize in is like how to run different subjects through one activity. So it streamlines planning. So you choose like one unit and you can do most of the subjects through that unit. So you're actually planning much less. You're not planning for 5 subjects every day. You're planning much less, and it's super hands-on, and the learning is it's much higher level learning, because you get really in depth into this one topic, and ideally it's a topic your child loves. So that actually works really great with kids who maybe are on the spectrum and love trains or love dinosaurs. Like, you can literally teach, K through, finishing high school with trains. You can run everything through trains. It's like, so there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of ways to approach it to make it fun, creative, not super stressful, not sucking the life out of you. So if that's where you're at, okay, stop. Like, call me, or send me a message. We'll figure it out. Like, don't do that. Don't be stuck in power struggles. Don't be stuck with overwhelm and stress and anxiety and the fear that your child isn't learning enough and all of that. That's not why you did this. That's not why you're homeschooling. It's supposed to be fun.
You sound like you've got a wealth of knowledge there to be able to take one topic and put it all into that one thing.
Yeah, so I teach parents how to do that. So that's where, like, I'm a teacher. I know how to explain the stuff and teach it, right? So that's, you just have to figure out what it is that you would like them to learn. And sometimes you don't have to figure that out, because sometimes there's like standards, like grade 4, these are the kinds of things that they learn. And maybe your child's ready for all that and maybe not, but it kind of gives you a sense of, well, what topics to cover. Or like math is something that's very sequential. It's really hard to skip. You can't really go from counting to multiplication. You got to do the addition and subtraction in there, right? Like one thing builds on the next.
Yeah.
But what are you using to teach it? Well, that's up to you, right? You can use tiny trains, you can use dolls, you can use Legos, you can use whatever your kid loves. And then it's fun because they're playing with Legos while they're doing math. So that's really, to me, that's the trick of it, is to make it about the experience, not about the skills.
Yeah.
Once a kid knows that they're learning something, it's hard, they don't always want to learn something. So if you work it in and the learning is a means to an end and they want that end, then they're excited to do it. And then they're writing like crazy because it's a fun game that requires writing. So they'll write, or they'll read because they want to find out what happens next. So there's a lot of trial and error, but it's really understanding who your child is and how they tick, what makes them tick, how they think, right? So, it's the creativity and flexibility. And like I said, I don't want to minimize. I mean, these are skills that I developed over years of teaching that I had to figure out how to apply to my individual human, right? Who is, every kid is different. But on the other hand, they're not that different. They respond differently, but they're not that different. They all want to be loved. They all want to be validated. They all want to feel supported. They want to feel like their parents like who they are as people. They want to feel love, And so the easiest thing, if you don't know how to do anything that I'm talking about, and I'm totally overwhelming you right now, the easiest thing to do is when your child's about homework, homeschooling, whatever, they say, I can't do this. The best thing is to say, okay, you can't do it. Can you tell me why? Just validate their pain. Instead of saying, of course you can. Just agree with them. Okay, it's too hard. Can you show me why it's too hard? Okay, this tastes bad. It tastes bad. Okay, why does it taste bad? How can we fix it? So if you start by validating, then they relax. If you say, oh no, it isn't, you can do it, then they have to fight because you're not hearing them. And then they have to get you to hear them. And if that means throwing things and kicking and turning over furniture to get you to understand that they can't do this because it's too hard, they will do it because they can't do it, it's too hard. So if our initial response is to validate, is to agree with them, and then ask some questions to try to get a better idea, that actually is the key to building up that connection, because then they feel like you get them, you respect them, you hear them, and then they can talk to you. And then you can problem solve. And if you problem solve out loud, you can teach them how to problem solve along the way, which is really what you want. You want kids who can problem solve and begin to identify, okay, I need to do this, but I can't. Why can't I? Okay, can I fix that problem on my own? Do I need to ask someone for help? Right? Once you get that, then it also really helps with the dynamic, because otherwise you're going to have a kid who, until they leave the house at whatever age that is, they're going to be calling for you to tell them where their shoe is. Where, Mom, how do I do this? Mom, where's my shoe? And we love our kids. We wanted to, we have them, we love them. Hopefully we chose it, we've got them. But that doesn't mean we want to spend our entire lives waiting on them hand and foot, right? Like they really get very used to having us as servants when they're little, and we don't want to do it anymore. So if you want to get out of that dynamic, you've got to really focus on the problems, the hearing and the respecting, because if you do it to them, they'll do it to you. And then the problem solving, well, that is a problem. What can we do? How can we solve that? And you work it through. And it's the same exact thing with high school kids. You just, you speak to them in a little bit of a more mature way, but it's the same thing. Anyone who thinks they're a high schooler is going to magically be responsible and remember to do stuff and get stuff done on their own. That is not developmentally appropriate thinking. They don't do that. The only reason we really become responsible is if life events force us to when we're young. and we have to take care of siblings, or we have to because our parents can't do it for us. Or like barring any of that, if we're, if nothing comes up in our childhood, it's making horrible mistakes, going to college and failing a class because you didn't show up, or not, you didn't do the assignment on time and you get a bad grade or you fail. You pay your bills on time because maybe you were taught to do it, but maybe you're more like me and you paid them late and you had to pay late fines, or maybe possibly your electricity got turned off once or twice because you forgot to pay the bill. And it's like, oops, I don't like that. I'm going to pay my bill from now on. There's a lot of like natural consequences. There's things that happen in life that make us be responsible. Like if you don't show up on time, you lose your job and then you can't pay your bills, and that's a problem. So you learn to be on time. So teenagers don't go through that unless, if you really want them to go through it faster, then they need to get a job. There needs to be an external force making them be responsible, because they'll get fired or they'll, get docked pay or whatever if they don't. So it's really understanding the different stages of development and managing your expectations, having those expectations, but managing them and realizing, okay, I expect my child to do X, Y, and Z, and they're not. So rather than be disappointed and upset that they're not, it turns into, how do I support them in getting there? How do I get them there? And that's our job as parents, and then as homeschooling parents, because that's what I do as a teacher when it comes to reading or writing or whatever. And then with parenting, it's how do I get my kid to be independent, because they're going to drive me crazy if they're not. Right. So that's kind of a long answer.
What is your relationship like now?
My relationship with my kid?
Yep.
Yeah, so we get along very well. We're quite close. We could say we're best friends, but it's like prepubescence. So the hormones are going. So there's a bit of like, secrets going on. What was in that pillowcase? If my kid ever hears this, they'll crack up. They won't tell me what's in the pillowcase. What was in the pillowcase that day. So it's really, me kind of trying to protect them, managing my anxieties that, puberty is hitting, and oh my God, right? Like, don't leave the house dressed like that. No, what are you doing? And equally, oh my God, this is the music they're listening to. How have I failed them as a parent, right? So, all those mixed emotions we feel as our kids become more and more independent. But overall, there's a very high emotional intelligence. There's a lot of communication. So when there's a problem, I believe that nobody should cry alone. So if my kid goes into, any kind of distress, gets upset, I'm going to be there and I'm going to hug them. I'm going to put that physical pressure that helps them calm down. I'm going to talk them through it. And then when they're calm, they can come and talk to me about it. And that is super important, finding your way, with help or not, out of those power struggles to a place where you can have conversations where they can tell you things without worrying that you'll get upset at them or they'll get in trouble. It becomes really important. You've got to keep the doorways open to communication, because as they get older, the situations become more potentially serious. And even if it's not something happening to them, it could be happening to someone they know and they need to tell an adult. And you really want to be the adult. If they can't come to you, they're going to go to their friends. They're going to go to the internet. They're going to get the worst advice possible. There might be some self-harm involved. Like you don't want any of that stuff happening. You want to know, even if you don't really want to know, you want to know, and you just got to like take those deep breaths and be able to hear and not get upset and explain. And I think it really helped, so we have a lot of fun. We can crack each other up. My husband has no idea what we're laughing about. He's totally, he doesn't get the joke. We'll just all of a sudden, we do a lot of wordplay. Like we just make up jokes like antelope and cantaloupe sound similar. So I don't know why, what do you call antelopes that can't get married? Cantaloupes, haha, and then we're like cracking each other up. So, that silliness, but I've got to mature a bit, because I'm still making the fart jokes, and now my kid thinks that's disgusting. So I've got to like adjust to their stage now, the constant like I said, getting to know, meeting who this person is. But yeah, I think we have a good relationship. It's certainly not without the annoyances. You know, I wish the clothes got put away. I wish things got put away, you know. But I think that we understand each other. There's, you know, there's a schedule written on the board. I'm not the keeper of information. There can be some, you know, here's the plan. Once you do this, you can do these things, type of thing. And, you know, there's a lot of flexibility in what we're doing. So I don't I don't know. I think we have a lovely relationship. I
But
hope.
you're
I
not
don't
ready
know.
to kill each other after being homeschooling.
Oh, no.
I think that's a
Not
great
at
sign.
all. But I worked really hard those first few years. Those first few years, I mean, I don't want to minimize it. I felt it was really hard. It was really a struggle. I felt trapped. I felt like, oh no, like I've decided to homeschool. I don't think my child is learning enough. It's just, you know, being reduced to meltdowns and tears way too often. I don't think they're learning enough. What am I going to do? I can't put them in school because we've taken a different path and my kid's not on grade level now, according to what the schools say. So like my child absolutely loved physics from a very early age. So my kid was super advanced with science and like I said, didn't really feel comfortable holding a pen or pencil. So it took a long time. You know, things catch up, things even out, but when they're young, you don't really have a sense of that or you don't know what to do. So it's very stressful. I had my sleepless nights. What am I going to do? How am I going to figure it out? But then I could use my background to figure it out. And sometimes it took a little longer. And I think I've gotten a little bit better at realizing, okay, something is happening. There's an underlying thing going on here. And if I can figure that out, it will be better. And I've gotten faster. I've gotten better at figuring that out with my kid. I've gotten
Yep.
faster at it. So learning, we now have very calm learning times. That stuff doesn't really come into learning. It comes in more with, you know, stuff like putting stuff away and, you know, putting the dishes away or like personal space. I'd love to have some. I'd love to sit on a chair without a human being physically on my body. You know, it's really hard to like, but as soon as my kid's involved in something they want to do, they forget I exist. So there's more independence. Yeah, in that sense, it gets a lot easier because there can be more independence. Once they're hooked on any kind of book series from Captain Underpants to what a, you know, series of unfortunate events, they're just off reading it. They want to come share it with you, but they'll just go and sit and read for whatever amount of time and it gets quiet and it's nice, or they get their own music and then they're in their room blasting their music, but it's still quiet. It's still a break, you know, so you do get more breaks as they get older. And I think it's like finding that communication group, the communication piece is so foundational to homeschooling. And that's, you know, it takes some time. It's hard if you don't have those skills because we don't get those skills on our own. So sometimes life gives us those skills and sometimes it doesn't. So, you know, working with me, figuring, you know, reading stuff on your own, but really figuring out the communication piece goes a long way. And then figuring out that learning piece of what's gonna jive really well with your kid just makes it so much more fun. So for real, I'm gonna say it again. Homeschooling should be fun for you. It should work for you. You shouldn't feel like a martyr. It shouldn't feel like a huge sacrifice. You shouldn't be exhausted and, you know, broken from it. And, you know, power struggles are very, very, very exhausting and they feel awful. So that is the first thing, is to know you can absolutely, you change as the adult. What you do will determine whether or not there's a power struggle. So trust me on this one. If you just start out validating, if you start saying, yes, you're right, that is too hard, that isn't working, that is a problem, I agree with you. Okay, what do we do? There's no power struggle. It's done. You're not trying to get them to do something they don't want to do. It's over. So I don't know, maybe I won't have a business anymore. I'll give the advice. Everyone will take my advice and you won't need me. But it's
I'll tell you what, I'm going to try it this afternoon when it comes to homework.
Yeah. Yeah. And whatever game you can think of. And if you can't think of a game because you're just not that kind of person, just tell them about all the awful homework you had to do and how much you couldn't stand it. And you know how boring it is. and they do it because, why? Give them a reason why teachers give homework. It doesn't have to be a good reason, just an honest reason. And yeah, I hear you. It's not fun. So what can we do? How can I support you in getting this done? And if they're already, I'm not doing it, blah, 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 blah. Well, then they're going to go to school not having done the homework. You know what I mean? And so like, who's getting the grade? Are you getting the, I know I don't want, I got top marks. I don't want my kid either to get a low grade. I understand. But is it really going to break is it really going to destroy their whole grade point average? Or is it kind of better to try to support? And if they're so set on not doing it, then maybe they should know what happens if they go to school and they haven't done their homework. Like that becomes a natural consequence if you're in school. But I really think if night after night after night, the homework is just awful for them to do, it's really worth having a conversation with the teacher. Because if the point is to practice multiplication, well, you can practice multiplication in other ways than a worksheet. You can do it through a game. You can play Yahtzee to practice multiplication. So like, you can do it with, their favorite characters. I mean, I'm going to date myself. Like, well, He-Man's back. They all come back anyway. Like, He-Man, needs to do this, and Skeletor doesn't want him to, right? Like, so, figure out the math. Oh, I can figure out the math, So we're, big Harry Potter fans in my house. A ton of classes have been potions classes with Professor Snape. And I get to be Professor Snape, and we take, all the Lego pieces and line them up, and we do some chemistry experiments together, and it's potions class. Or fractions, mix, 1/3 of this with half a cup of this. And it's just practicing fractions, but it's making a potion because there's food coloring. And it's fun. And it's really fun because when I'm Professor Snape, I get to be so mean. So if you're getting like a little frustrated with your child, be Professor Snape and you can say awful mean things. And of course I don't mean them, but you get a chance to like be that mean, horrible teacher that you wish you could be, and they have to put up with it because you're Professor Snape. So, you got to find the joy. You eke out the joy wherever you can. I mean, it has to be fun for you though. So, whatever works for both of you is what really matters. And there's so many ways to do that. If you love, I gave during COVID, when everyone was homeschooling, I had so many phone calls from friends. Help me, what am I doing? And I'd say, look, you want to teach geography and you like Conan, do the YouTube videos of Conan traveling and visiting different places around the world. Watch it, laugh, look up the places, learn some stuff about the places. You've done geography. We do comedy classes. We watch Carol Burnett. We watch, some old Saturday Night Live. I check that it's appropriate first. But, like we watch this stuff. Oh, that's physical comedy. Oh, that's more, intellectual comedy, And my kid has a good sense of humor. My kid has good timing, because it's a little more fun if you're working with someone who's funny and you can make each other laugh. So, so all kinds of possibilities.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I've had an absolute blast, and this has just gone on for so long. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. And I'm here, to give tips and support anyone who needs it, homeschooling or not. If you're suffering in parenting with these power struggles and stuff, let's just figure it out. You really don't have to do that. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
And thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Relationship Talks. If you can, I would love for you to jump on and leave a review. And whilst you are at it, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please join me again next week when we get to take a look behind closed doors at someone else's relationship. But until then, I am your host, Laurie Brooke, and remember, the choice is yours, so make today and the week the very best it can be.